At around 9:25 to 9:30 on a Friday night, a Yale senior was last seen near campus in New Haven. Less than an hour later, at about 9:55 p.m., a 911 caller reported a woman bleeding near the corner of Edge Hill and East Rock Road. Police arrived within minutes. The woman was Suzanne Jovin. She had been stabbed to death. She was only 21 years old, and more than 25 years later, no one has been arrested for her murder. Connecticut's cold case unit still lists the case as open, with a $50,000 state reward and an additional $100,000 committed by Yale University. That alone would make this case haunting. But what turned it into one of the most baffling unsolved murders on the East Coast was the timeline. Suzanne was not someone who had simply vanished into a fog of unknown hours. Her evening was relatively structured. She had spent part of it at a volunteer event. She had borrowed and returned a Yale vehicle. She had spoken with people. She had declined a movie invitation because she said she planned to work. Then, somehow, inside a very short window, she ended up nearly 2 miles away from where she should have been, mortally wounded in a quiet residential neighborhood. So, the real question in this case is not only who killed Suzanne, it is this: how does a college senior move through a documented Friday night, step into a gap of roughly 30 minutes, and never come back out of it? And how does a case that seemed, at least at first, so close to an explanation stay unsolved for decades? This episode is not built around a dramatic final reveal because there isn't one. Instead, it's built around pressure points, a narrow window of time, a crime scene that didn't fit the expected route, a high-profile investigation that centered public suspicion on one man for many years, despite the absence of a publicly disclosed physical evidence tying him to the crime, and a lingering sense that the answer may still be hidden inside those missing minutes. Before Suzanne Jovin became the center of a cold case, she was a student with momentum. Connecticut's case summary describes her as a talented and popular senior at Yale University. Public biographical accounts say she was born in Göttingen, Germany, studied international relations and political science, while volunteering through the campus and community programs with an active student life. She worked in Davenport Dining Hall and helped found the German Club, while participating in music and tutoring activities. In other words, she appears in record not as someone who drifted at the edges of campus life, but as someone deeply inside it. That matters because in a case like this, the victim's routine is part of the mystery. When someone moves through life in a way that is organized, socially connected, and purpose-driven, unexplained deviations stand out more sharply. Suzanne's final evening matters not just because it ended in violence, but because much of it was traceable. There were obligations, errands, conversations, and expected stops. And then there was the break, the place where the structure ends, the point where a normal Friday night stops making sense. In many unsolved murders, the victim disappears into a long, murky stretch of unknown time. Suzanne Jovin didn't. She disappeared into something much narrower, and because it was narrower, it became harder to explain away. To understand why this case feels so unresolved, you have to understand the geography. Yale's central campus sits inside a busy, walkable urban grid. Students move on foot. They cut across courtyards, pass through gates, cross streets, and drift between libraries, apartments, events, and friends' rooms. But Suzanne was found in the East Rock area, a quieter residential section northeast of Yale's central core. Because even without knowing every detail of her thought process that night, investigators and the public both recognized the same thing. This was not the most obvious place for Suzanne to be. The distance between where she was last seen near Yale and where she was found raised a simple but stabilizing question. How did she get here so quickly? Did she walk at an unusual pace, accept a ride? Did she arrange to meet someone? Did she get into the car voluntarily? Or did something happen between the campus area and East Rock that has never been fully reconstructed? Those questions are old now, but they have not lost their force. Because if you can explain the movement, you may be able to explain the murder. And if you cannot explain the movement, the rest of the case never settles. December 4, 1998 was a Friday. Public accounts of Suzanne's day say she had been working on her senior thesis and was also involved that evening with Best Buddies pizza making event at Trinity Lutheran Church in New Haven. Best Buddies pairs students with people who have intellectual disabilities, and by all available accounts, Suzanne took that work seriously. Later that evening, she borrowed a Yale vehicle, drove another volunteer home, and returned the car to the Yale parking lot near Edgewood Avenue and House Street at about 8:45 p.m. Up to this point, nothing in the night appears chaotic. It sounds busy but coherent. Service event, cleanup, a borrowed car, dropping someone off and returning the vehicle. A series of actions that can be followed. That is one of the reasons this case became so compelling. There is no sense in the available record that Suzanne was spiraling into some hidden crisis that night. There is no obvious setup, no dramatic public argument, no known emergency driving her across the city. Instead, there is routine, and routine is often what makes an unexplainable death feel unbearable, because routine creates expectation. After returning the car, Suzanne headed back toward her apartment. According to public summaries of the case, around that same part of that evening, friends invited her to go to a movie. She declined, saying she had planned to work that night. That detail is small but powerful because it suggests intention. She had a plan, or at least the outline of one. Go home, work, continue the night as expected. And yet she did not end up at home. She ended up dying in East Rock. This is where the case tightens, and where it begins to refuse easy explanation. According to public reporting summarized in the case record, Suzanne was later seen near Yale campus area around 9:25 to 9:30 p.m., often described near College Street or Phelps Gate. Roughly 25 to 30 minutes later at 9:55, a 911 call came in reporting a woman bleeding near Edge Hill Road. Police arrived at around 9:58 p.m. and found Suzanne with fatal stab wounds. That narrow span of time is the whole case, because within that span, one or more of the following must be true. Suzanne changed her plans. Suzanne agreed to meet someone. Suzanne got into or was forced into a vehicle. Or Suzanne's movements that night were never fully understood as clearly as investigators first believed. And every one of those possibilities leads to somewhere different. If she got into the car willingly, then the killer may have been someone she knew, or at least someone who did not immediately alarm her. If she was picked up unexpectedly, then the encounter may have been more opportunistic. If she was walking with purpose toward East Rock, then why? What reason would pull her into that direction on a cold December night after she had already indicated she planned to work? The timeline does not just leave a hole, it creates competing stories, and none of them have ever been proven. This is why the phrase 30-minute gap matters, not because the number is exact in some mystical way, but because it contains the last unexplained transition in Suzanne's life. And if you can solve the transition, you may solve the murder. Suzanne was found near the intersection of Edge Hill Road and East Rock Road in the East Rock neighborhood. Connecticut case page keeps the location simple and direct. She was stabbed to death there on December 4, and the public reporting has long described the area as a quiet and residential, which only deepened the unease in this case. There is something deeply unsettling about the crime scene that feels disconnected from the victim's expected path, because the location itself becomes evidence, even when it cannot fully explain itself. Was this where the attack began, or where it ended? Was Suzanne brought here, dropped there? Did she leave a vehicle there? Did she flee there? Did she meet someone there? In an unsolved case, place becomes argument. And Edge Hill Road argued against simplicity. It suggests that something happened between the campus and the corner which investigators could not conclusively map. A meeting, a ride, a confrontation, a sudden turn. Some piece of motion that never became a clean story. And that may be the deepest frustration of the case. Not merely that Suzanne was killed, but that even the geography seems to know something the investigation could never fully articulate. High-profile murder investigations often suffer from the same paradox. The more pressure there is to solve them quickly, the easier it becomes to mistake direction for progress. Suzanne's case drew enormous attention. She was a Yale student. The murder was shocking. The timeline was short. The location was strange. The public wanted a name. And in the earliest days, that pressure appears to have narrowed quickly around one person. Suzanne's thesis advisor, James Van de Velde. Public reporting says his name was leaked within days, and for years, public understanding of the case was shaped by the idea that he was a central figure in it. That would matter in any case. Here, it mattered enormously, because once an investigation's public narrative hardens around one suspect, every other lead risks being measured against that person rather than against the facts themselves. Even if investigators continue pursuing other possibilities, the culture around the case changes. Witnesses interpret things through that lens. Journalists do too. So do administrators, students, and the wider public. And over time, a theory can begin to feel like evidence, even when it isn't. In Suzanne's case, That became one of the defining wounds of the investigation. This part of the story has to be handled carefully because one of the clearest lessons of the case is how damaging public suspicion can be when it outruns the evidence. In 2004, a federal court opinion arising from Van de Velde's lawsuit summarized his allegations that Yale and New Haven officials collaborated in a way that led to him being publicly ID'd as the prime suspect. The court document does not determine guilt in the murder, but it does document the basic sequence by which his name entered public sphere so quickly. Years later, in 2013, state's attorney Michael Dearington said publicly that Van de Velde was no longer a suspect. Reporting at that time stated this was the first time prosecutors had said so explicitly. Just as important in what the public reporting and later summaries have emphasized, no physical evidence was publicly identified tying him to the crime. That does not tell us who killed Suzanne, but it tells us something different about the investigation. It tells us the years of public focus may have settled on a man who was never charged and who was later publicly removed from suspicion. And once that happens, the question becomes unavoidable. What was missed while everyone was looking in that direction? This is not just an issue of fairness to one person. It is an issue of lost time. In cold cases, lost time can be fatal to truth. Memories decay, witnesses move, social ties dissolve, and potential suspects die. People who might once have talked become harder to find, or harder to pressure, or simply less certain of what they remember. So, when a case spends years inside a public theory that does not lead to prosecution, the damage is not only reputational, it can be investigative. More than 2 decades later, the case remains active because its core questions are still alive. How did Suzanne get from Yale area to Edge Hill Road so quickly? Was she meeting someone? Did she accept a ride? Was the killer known to her? Was the attack targeted? Or was it opportunistic? Did someone in New Haven know, even then, exactly who was responsible and simply kept quiet? Officially, Connecticut's cold case unit continues to ask for information, no matter how remote or trivial the information may be, which reflects a familiar truth in old homicide cases. The missing fact is often not dramatic. Sometimes it is small, a memory of a car, a name spoken once, a relationship no one understood at the time, a person who changed behavior after the murder, a detail that seemed unimportant in '98 and critical now. And then there is the question beneath all the others. Was the murder itself the true mystery, or was the real mystery always the movement that came before it? Because if Suzanne's path to East Rock can never be reconstructed with certainty, the case may change shape all at once. Then the impossible might become a sequence again. Then the gap closes, and then someone may finally have to answer for what happened inside it. Suzanne was just 21 years old. She was a Yale senior. She spent December 4 in ways that looked, from the outside, ordinary and productive. Campus work, volunteer commitments, small errands, brief conversations, and plans for the rest of the night. Then, in less than half an hour, the ordinary evening gave way to a murder scene on Edge Hill Road. No one has ever been arrested, and Connecticut still lists the case as open. What lingers in this case is not just violence. It is the compression, the feeling that the answer is trapped inside a very small amount of time. A ride, a meeting, a wrong turn, a person she trusted, a person she didn't, a decision made in minutes, followed by silence that has lasted decades.